Good evening. Good evening, all. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the June 24th Planning and Development Committee meeting. We have a quorum. May I have a motion for approval of the regular meeting minutes, June 10th, 2019? Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Meeting minutes pass. Items for consideration. Let's see. Are they all for this one? No, they're all for, oh, there is one for P1. So we'll start with public comment. On item P1, Sean Jones. Good evening, Sean.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sean Jones. I represent Sheridan VF Inc., property owner of 2650 Sheridan. My client is here. If there are any questions that you may have for my client directly, I'm happy to bring him forward. I am here seeking zoning relief, but what we really want is just to keep things the way they were when my client purchased the property, which is a curb cut in front and a garage in back. This has been an unfortunate series of circumstances that having to do with timing of the issue, in that my client had to take steps to split this pen and get utilities hooked up as soon as possible because of this Sheridan Road repaving project. It had to be done right away, and we were scrambling like crazy. He was scrambling like crazy to work with the city to get this split pen to take care of that before the Sheridan Road project got underway, because once that happens, we can't tear it up and connect utilities again. So we had to do it that way. We had to split the pen first. That's really what's caused the problem here. If my client had purchased a property, built a house, and then split the pen and built a second house, there'd be no issue at all with its curb cut. The curb cut would remain. All we're seeking is exactly what was there before. We had a curb cut up front and a driveway, and in back there was a garage. What we're trying to do is keep the curb cut up front, keep a garage in back. The timing is critical because of the utilities. Again, my client was frankly very, very surprised when, after purchasing this property, he drives up and sees that the curb cut has been paved over. The reason the curb cut was paved over, apparently, in the email that I passed out to you, is because city staff and a neighbor standing out there told the contractor, just cover it over because he's going to put it back in a different place anyway. Well, maybe he wanted to put it in a different place, but that wasn't the plan necessarily. And now he does. He is willing and able and would actually prefer to put it in a slightly different place. But as the email sets forth, everybody expected the curb cut to come back, even when the contractor covered it over. And you've got the email, you got the pictures, how it's been covered over as part of the project. We're just here trying to, again, keep the curb cut that was already there. We're not seeking to add an additional curb cut. We're actually interested in keeping this one and maybe shrinking it. It will be smaller. Not as wide as the current curb cut or what was there. You can still see the driveway. So we're here, I'm asking for this zoning relief to allow a curb cut up front. I think it is according to code. The code says if property is improved with an existing curb cut, the curb cut can remain. That's what the code says. Now, the city takes the position that as soon as there's a demolition, even if there's a new plan for a new house, as soon as there's a demolition, that instantaneously renders the property unimproved, and then you start from scratch. I don't believe that's a proper interpretation of the law. The property is improved. It has a curb cut. It allowed for street parking from the curb. Things have gotten even worse. In demolishing this property, my client was told by the city that he's not even allowed to bring equipment over the curb. He had to pull a special permit to be able to do that. This has just been trouble from the start. And I wish I wish we could go back and I guess start over on this and at least ask for his input when the city is covering over with concrete a property owner's curb cut. But that didn't happen. And here we are today, forced to seek zoning relief in order to get what was already there, just keep things exactly the way they are. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And
I
my
need to
client is
actually-
also here.
Need to read it. So P1, the Zoning Board of Appeals and staff recommend denial of Ordinance 64-019, authorizing a major variance to establish a curb cut and driveway from the street frontage Sheridan Road on a newly subdivided property with alley access in the R1 Single Family Residential District. The property currently features a single-family residence with a curb cut and driveway from the street frontage. The existing single-family residence will be demolished and a new residence will be constructed. The proposal does not meet the standard for variance. Specifically, the proposal is not keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance, does not have a hardship or practical difficulty peculiar to the property, is based upon a desire to extract additional income from the property, and is not limited to the minimum change necessary for introduction. Is there any discussion on this? Alderman Ravel?
Well, I agree with Mr. Jones that it's a whole lot of unfortunate events kind of coming all together here. But just to kind of review the history, the applicant for the subdivision, which was the previous owner, was made aware at the time of the subdivision that alley access would be required for the new homes. And it was clear at the time of the subdivision that the existing house was going to have to be demolished because it really straddled the two, what would become the two new lots. And the surveyor in February of 2018 submitted a preliminary site plan for the subdivision on behalf of the property owner at the time, and it showed detached garages with alley access for both properties. So that was the understanding at the time that we were talking with the previous owner. And it's obviously unfortunate that this information was not conveyed to the current owner. The house has now been demolished, and I'm sorry to hear that we're even penalizing you for having to go across the curb to demolish the house. But the former driveway has now lost its legal nonconformity. I've walked down the alley a couple of times. It's really a good-sized alley. It has, it's a good 20 feet wide. It has lots of, roughly a dozen garages on the alley, both from the east side and the west side. Almost all of them are two-car garages. It just seems to me it's not a difficult alley to navigate, not difficult to get in and out of what would be a garage on the back. And then also, I guess I am concerned as the alderman about precedent. I did have another homeowner at the very north, towards the very north end of the block, who asked to have a curb cut and a parking pad put in front of her house, and we declined to do that. We talked with her extensively about making better use of the parking pad off of her alley, and that's what she's doing now without needing to have that curb cut. So I do worry about additional property owners, particularly on Sheridan Road, wanting to ask for a curb cut and a driveway or something across the public sidewalk.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson?
Okay, threshold question. Would your client be willing to pay for the work if it was permitted to be done? So, in other words, pay for
to put
redoing the curb and
cut
everything?
back?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. In looking at the other properties, it's correct that the one just to the north just got an additional curb cut, so now they have two, so they can do a circular drive around, right?
I have pictures of several other properties along the stretch. There are a bunch of curb cuts.
Yeah, I took a run this morning down the street
Yeah.
because I was curious and chose my route quite carefully. I understand, this is, I feel like this kind of falls into the category of form over substance. And, it probably shouldn't have been, they probably shouldn't have used those forms in the first instance. So, the driveway was there. It almost seems like it was a mistake. And because of the, I don't know that mistake's the right word, but not the intention. And then because of the, something that was done without intent, now you're, kind of suffering these other consequences. So I'm not inclined to, put that form over substance. Is it possible to have enough space for a turnaround so that it's easier to get in and out?
What, I should have referenced this. The ZBA struggled with this a good bit, and you'll see in their recommendation that several of them were leaning toward granting, but the strict, again, form over substance.
Strict interpretation, right.
Strict interpretation, they couldn't. But he would have a 3-point turnaround, so you would come out forward. And that's a requirement that we're happy to comply with.
And obviously that would require more surface coverage. Do you think that could be partially, at least partially accomplished with permeable surface?
Yes, there's no issues with lot coverage on this
Okay.
property.
Well,
But yes,
even like, just to kind of mitigate the impact, even if it might be legal, but if it could be mitigated further.
I believe we are considered pebble or gravel
Okay.
as the wide turnaround.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of the reason why we have discretion to, take things on. So I think we should allow this to be replaced.
Alderman Ravel?
Just to go back to the house immediately to the north that did get approval to put a second curb cut in, their coach house on the alley has no access from the alley. It's a access from the Sheridan Road driveway, so they didn't have an option of using a garage from the alley.
Any further discussion? Well, this was for introduction, so there's no action. Second. Oh. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
P2, we have one public comment. I thought we did have one. Oh, here it is. Sue Lobach. Thank you for being here this evening.
Okay. Good evening. I just wanted to, I'm Sue Lolbach. I'm with Connections for the Homeless and Joining Forces for Affordable Housing. I just wanted to say that we hope that you will recommend approval of P2. We feel that the changes to the inclusionary zoning and the zoning ordinances that are related to it here are really increasing the possibility for inclusionary zoning to really make a difference and result in more affordable units. It's really going in the right direction, and we hope you will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. P2, the Plan Commission and staff recommend adoption of Ordinance 54-019, amending various parts of Title VI zoning of the Evanston City Code to conform with the City of Evanston Inclusionary Housing Ordinance to revise density and parking bonuses established by the City of Evanston Revised Inclusionary Housing Ordinance 107-018. This is for introduction. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Need a motion. Thank you. Need a second. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. P3, we have no public comment. P3, staff recommends adoption of Ordinance 65-019 to extend the time for commencement of construction of the planned development at 100 and 128 through 132 Chicago Avenue, originally approved on June 26, 2018. The ordinance would grant a one-year extension for building permit issuance to June 24th, 2020. This is for introduction.
Second.
Any discuss? Alderman Rainey.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm I'm going to ask if we can suspend the rules and approve this tonight. And the reason I'm asking for this is I believe it will allow for a more, I believe it's affecting the delay, and waiting 2 weeks will affect movement on a change in the, is this correct? I want to
Is-
talk about the 2 new units.
Is my understanding they're coming forward for a major adjustment?
Right.
So
So
that
we
we
wanna
have to
move
wait
that.
until we have the extension to start
Right.
that?
There was going to be event space on the second floor, but because there is going to be new event space on Howard Street, they are a little timid in adding that event space at this location, which is only a block away from the other event space. I don't think it's going to be in competition, but I think their change is a good one because I think we need more housing. So they're going to come to us and ask to be allowed to change that event space to 2 new units of rental housing at that, on that space. And I believe in addition to that, exercise room. So 2 new units of rental housing. And so that'll make it, I think, 26 units. I'm not exactly sure of the number, but 2 units. And so in order to get that moving at the Plan Commission, they need to have this extension approved. And they have no intentions of dragging this out a whole year, but since the first thing ends on June 30th, they need that extension now. So if you will please approve suspension of the rules so we can take action on that, so they can move ahead with the 2 additional units. That would be great. Thank you.
Not remembering the details of this, do the 2 additional units trigger any additional inclusionary benefit? or
I don't
anything?
believe so. They're going to go to the Plan Commission, that'll all be worked out, and that'll come back. That'll come back here.
Okay.
And so,
Thank you. Alderman Wilson?
Well, and I think it would be good form to not let it lapse, so it would otherwise lapse
No,
as of
we
June
can't let it
26th.
lapse.
So I would support suspension of the rules, and that would give us enough time to vet the revised proposal.
Great. So do we motion the original?
So Alderman Rainey, did you move to suspend the rules?
yes, I move to suspend the rules and then take action.
And I will second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes to
Thank you.
suspend the rules.
And I'll move that we forward it to council for introduction and action.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes with 1 no. Alderman Suffredin.
Well, then
Items-
it actually fails.
Did that fail?
Fails. Oh, it passed.
He voted for suspend of the rules, I guess.
Yeah, he voted to suspend. Right. So was I right? Okay, thank you. Items, I'm sorry, did you say something? Okay, thank you. Items for discussion, we have PD1, and we have several public comments. We will have a 3-minute limit, and we'll start with Mr. James Engelman, Carl Klein, and Julie Wonkman. Good evening, James.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm James England from the 5th Ward at 24 Brown. I think it's a good idea to close the Elton Road between Emerson and Orlando Avenue to preserve the new street near the downtown area. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Carl Klein.
Good evening. Let's see. At first, this item seems to be yet another solution in search of a problem, but after some research, it becomes clear for why this is being proposed. Ted Rosenbaum, a former resident of Evanston who currently lives in Melbourne, Australia, sent a letter on April 2nd to the mayor and members of the Evanston City Council. It appears as a result of this letter, Alderwoman Fisk submitted a formal proposal for a pilot to evaluate the temporary closure of Elgin Road between Emerson Street and Orrington Avenue. From Mr. Rosenbaum's letter, which was not included in the packet, it states the reasoning behind the closure of Elgin Road. Quote, according to the plan would create a new parcel at the corner of Clark and Sherman large enough for a civic center by closing Elgin Road between Emerson and Clark, create a new public green space, and allow for a new protected bicycle route in the former right-of-way, unquote. Before any action is taken on this item, I believe that the Planning and Development Committee needs to ask Alderwoman Fisk to be very clear with the citizens of Evanston for the reasoning behind this proposal. What might appear as a road closure becomes a bigger project, which will affect everyone in the city in ways that you may not have considered or want Evanstonians to know about. What are your future plans? Are you planning on selling the Lorraine H. Morton Civic Center and building a new civic center? Will the current civic center be threatened with demolition again? Has there been a study of how much money closure of Elgin Road and possible construction of a new civic center is going to cost? Most likely millions of dollars. The city of Evanston will most likely have to issue more bonds. Is it prudent for the city to issue another bond sale? It's also important to understand that it is common for cities to issue municipal bonds to raise capital to fund a special project. But remember that the interest owed to lenders is paid by taxes levied on the community benefiting from the particular bond-funded project. Some residents will be paying a disproportionately higher increase in taxes in terms of income. As has been previously presented, the city states that there is a minimal increase in city taxes as a result of a bond sale. But remember that if you all approve another bond sale for maybe this project and potentially a new civic center, the taxes levied on Evanstonians most likely will increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Next, we have Julie Workman. Yes. Thank you, Julie, for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Julie Workman. Apologies for my terrible handwriting on the sign-in sheet. I'm an attorney at Levenfeld Pearlstein in Chicago. Our firm represents the Condominium Association for 800 Elgin and the property management of the building at that location. The board and the property manager of the building asked me to be here tonight to express their concerns regarding the proposed pilot program to evaluate the closure of Elgin Road between Emerson and Orrington. As you know, 800 Elgin is a 16-story condominium building constructed in 2004. 800 Elgin is a very large building that spans an entire block between Elgin Road and Clark Street. The building has 246 units and approximately 500 residents. The residents include a very large student population. Approximately 50% of the population is students, many of whom are Kellogg MBA students. I'll talk a little bit more about them in a moment. Families, singles, empty nesters, and a significant elderly population, and essentially a very broad swath of individuals in the building. As you know, primary pedestrian and vehicular access to this building is via its front entry on Elgin Road, which is between Sherman and Benson. Emergency vehicles, delivery vehicles, moving trucks, all access the building from Elgin Road. The building receives over 200 packages every day. There are food deliveries, grocery deliveries, ride shares. All of these occur via access to the main entry on Elgin Road. I mentioned the students earlier. About half of the students the building's population is comprised of students. The proposed pilot closure of Elgin Road was proposed for July and August of this year. July and August, as you can imagine, is the prime time for moving students in and out of housing for Northwestern. I'm told by the property manager that between July and August, every single weekday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., the building is booked solid with students moving in and out. And the moving trucks access the building from Elgin Road. It should be fairly obvious, I think, that this proposal has the potential to very seriously and materially adversely affect the access of our owners and our residents and our guests to 800 Elgin. The sheer volume of traffic into and out of the property that would need to be rerouted is in and of itself questionable, and it makes you question the wisdom of this proposal. The proposal would effectively eliminate the delivery and pickup points for people and packages at 800 Elgin. I will acknowledge that the board and the property manager are in favor of evaluating improvements to pedestrian and vehicular safety on Elgin Road. The property manager told me just today that she was looking out her window at somebody trying to dart traffic on Elgin Road and climbing over a bumpy median to get to the other side of the street. Obviously not a safe thing to do, and perhaps there are improvements that could be made to improve safety there. But those improvements cannot and should not be imposed in a vacuum. Change should not be made impulsively and without considering the impact on property owners in the vicinity. In order to move forward with any modification of traffic or pedestrian patterns on Elgin Road, a full traffic study and feasibility studies should be performed prior to any of those modifications, including and
10
especially,
seconds.
especially closures. The building absolutely needs to maintain total access for its owners and residents. Any reduction of their access would result in a taking of their property, which would violate both their federal and state constitutional right against having property taken without due compensation.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, please, thank you. Next, we have Carol Basso. Yes, Carol Bass, then Michael Miller. And can you help me with this? Levi? Duchess? No idea. None. Looks like ends in VA. Okay, and Claire Kammer. Yes, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carol Bass. I'm a member of the Downtown Evanston Board, and I'm the president of the Condo Association at Optima Horizons Residence Building at 800 Elgin Road. Optima Horizons is a great place to live. We're well managed. We have a wonderful mix of residents. We're considered the friendliest residents in downtown Evanston, and we have just astonishing views. Our residents and our board were surprised today to learn that the street that our entrance faces, Elgin Road, will possibly be closed for several weeks this summer and may be closed permanently. We were surprised because no one from the city, not our mayor, not our alderman, contacted our board or our manager, nor any of our residents. I was astonished to find that closing our street was to be the major discussion item at this council meeting, and none of us were ever notified. On behalf of my fellow residents, I am insulted at the disrespect that we have been shown. The letter that was referenced earlier was sent on April 2nd. I presume that the council got it during April. Why has no one mentioned anything to us? I was intrigued with a letter that this council received in April from Ted Rosenbaum, a former Evanston resident, who explained that he can't be here tonight because he lives in Melbourne, Australia. His report is, I understand, the basis for the closing of Elgin Road. I was surprised in reading Mr. Rosenbaum's report, which states, and I quote, "Despite existing for 50 years, no development has taken place along Elgin Road, which interacts with the street. Along the entire half-mile stretch of road, the only building that faces Elgin Road in a meaningful way is Northwestern School of Music, which all of us know has not existed there for the last 3-4 years. The nearly 500 residents of 800 Elgin Road are more than mildly surprised to have our building characterized by omission as having no meaningful interaction with Elgin Road. Our building is a block long. It's 16 stories tall. It is a presence. Our front door is on Elgin Road. The box for our building's emergency services is at our Elgin Road entrance. Our many elderly and disabled residents catch their cabs and Ubers and Lyfts on Elgin Road. School buses use the Elgin Road entrance for our students. We have more than 100 residents who use our Elgin Road entrance each year to move in or move out. Delivery services deliver more than 30 meals.
20 seconds.
200 packages each day at our entrance. Don't do this. It's not an option. The report that you've been given is faulty and erroneous in stating that there's no meaningful interaction with Elgin Road. The nearly 500 of us who live at 800 Elgin Road simply know better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Michael. Thank you for being
My
here.
name is Michael Miller. I own a condo in 800 Elgin Road, and I never received a notice before this morning that came from the manager of the building. I am on the board. I would expect it to at least got something before this time. Second, I'm just curious if this committee has done any studies on the effect of closing Elgin Road and the effect it will have on the property taxes of the building. Because in my full-time job, I'm in the appraisal business. And I didn't think about it till this morning, but if Elgin Road is closed and we have no fire and police and ambulances being able to use Elgin Road, it decreases the value of the property, in my mind, at least 50%. We pay in total roughly $20 million in taxes. That would affect the budget of Evanston, the city of Evanston, by roughly $10 million. I have nothing mentioned in any of the information, sketchy information that I received, and I look over at Miss Fisk, and she's smiling that she's happy about this. Therefore, I would like to see this idiotic proposal just dumped by this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire. Thank you. Good evening, Claire.
Hi. My name is Claire Kammer, and I come to you today to speak as a resident of Optima Horizons. Today, our address is 800 Elgin Road, but under the proposed closure of Elgin Road by Councilwoman Fisk, my home and the safety are at risk. The heart of the Optima Horizons community is anchored on Elgin Road. Everything from our mailboxes to our staff access from this entrance by design. There is no other public access to these central resources via any other road. I repeat that. There is no access via any other road to the central lobby of our building. Visitor access was routed here for the safety of our residents. The study circulated by Mr. Ted Rosenbaum misses the fact that 246 residential units face Elgin Road, a glaring error and evidence that this proposal was drafted half a world away. Forgetting this fact and the hundred of lives affected causes you to miss one of the most critical issues in the proposal: safety. The proposed closure would eliminate access for fire and ambulatory access to our building, forcing first responders to access units from a block away on the other side of the proposed park or through a gated parking garage to which fire trucks and ambulances could not access. This exposes myself and my neighbors to dangerous delays in response. This is further burdened by the location of the building fire panel. The panel serves as a critical interface for responders for incident management. All alarms, elevators, building communication channels lead to this place, and first responders must have quick and unfettered access. Again, putting the lives at risk, not to mention increasing insurance premiums. This is even more dangerous with the proposed July-August trial. This is days away. It allows no time for our city to consider safety implications, build out alternative processes or bypass routes, educate associated first responders, develop signage to reroute pedestrian traffic, and on and on. Even as all of this, you can expect confusion and delays. Contractors, home health care aides, delivery drivers, and others who support our building and our residents would have access cut off. Long-term solutions aren't much better. Retrofitting our building to support other access points would be costly and burdensome. It would require completely reconfiguring our first floor, including moving boilers and industrial equipment, as well as fire and security systems at a cost of millions of dollars. This proposal is flawed, and the recommended pilot to just throw up some barricades to see what happens in the next months is ridiculous. The plan is not built on sound fact. It has no defined goals or milestones for what is intended to be achieved in this pilot. It ignores community engagement and the implications for Evanston businesses and restaurants. I applaud the city's commitment to carbon reduction and optimizing design for walkability. I support this vision, but don't believe it can be achieved with this plan. Additional bike paths and measures to
10
encourage
seconds.
safe pedestrian practices in this section are ones I would consider, but eliminating Elgin Road is not. Roads are more than residential traffic. They define.
Thank you. It's possibly a Eva. Okay, no. We have Linda Young and Gerald Siegel, and then Jim. Yes, thank you.
Hello, my name is Linda Young. I live at 1864 Sherman, which is very close to the intersection of Elgin and Sherman Road. I cross that road almost every day. I do think that I do not feel impeded from accessing downtown from the north side of the city, though I do think that Elgin Road can be very busy, and the lights and left-hand turn signals could definitely become more friendly to pedestrians. The way this information was rolled out, whether intentionally or not, has, I think, caused a lot of problems and a lot of stress. When I first read about this yesterday in the newspaper, I said, close Elgin Road? What? Where's all that traffic going to go? The truck traffic is one thing. The vehicle traffic is another. I would say walking and driving along those intersections quite regularly, I would see a lot of traffic staying on Emerson Road to Sherman and actually going through the 2 blocks of Northwestern to Sheridan, which I don't think Northwestern's going to like very much, but neither will the drivers because there's traffic calming in that area. The truck issue is a big one that needs to be taken care of. So today I read Mr. Rosenbaum's letter. And some of the things Mr. Rosenbaum says are interesting. He's proposing a number of public benefits from closing a road that in some ways might be too big and too busy for what we really need. But what I find myself asking is, what is the end vision of the City Council and of our government in a process like this? If we free up all this land, did we think we were going to use it for public benefits? Because the packet doesn't talk about that at all. Or is there any kind of vision at all or public process for it? One vision I would not be supportive of is abandoning Elgin Road and attaching that land to private parcels for private development of more high-rises. So what I'm left thinking through all of this is I do think the pilot idea is flawed because I think it's bad timing. There's not enough time to plan for it. The sequence of it doesn't feel right because we haven't put together a vision or a plan, so why do the pilot now? The duration seems way too long, 1 month, especially during all these busy times. So I'm left concluding, since I've seen a lot of development around where I live recently, and more of it even planned.
15 seconds.
That we had once heard about a potential plan for the North Downtown. It never came to fruition, and I'd highly urge that we go back to that thought of a community planning process for a plan for North Downtown.
Thank you. Gerald Siegel, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm also at 800 Elgin Road, and I'm going to be short on this. I feel like you're barricading my condo that I've been here. I was the second one to move in 19 years ago, and when I saw this morning, that you're just going to go ahead and barricade our main access into the building, you're going to kill property value. You're all the health and Uber. I take Uber. I seldom drive. take Uber, Lyft to get around. I go, this is very destructive. And I know anyone on the board would hate to have their house barricaded, and that's how I feel. You are barricading our house, our 800 Elgin Road condo. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Jim, could you tell me your last name, sir? Stavish. Hello, Mr. Stavish. Thank you for being here.
I failed handwriting in grammar school. I'm not going to say much because the people that preceded me really did a nice job of explaining what the problems are, particularly the access of fire trucks and police vehicles that come down Elgin. I don't know what would happen, how they could come in to roads that are much smaller and the access is worse. So I just want to emphasize what they did before me, and I think it's a bad idea. And I think the pilot's closing is also a bad idea, and the timing is terrible.
Thank you. Gail Miller, John Jones, and then Robert Mark.
I'm Gail Miller, and I live at 800 Elgin Road. And just to go along with what Jim said, I think many of our residents have eloquently given all the reasons why this is a bad idea. And I just want to add that I'm just incredulous that we live in Evanston, a city that we all prize ourselves as being well-educated, well-informed, that our representative would buy into a plan so full of flaws and errors. Thank you.
Thank you. John B. Jones.
I'll be brief because most of the people before me have very eloquently spoken about the disadvantages of what you're proposing. I simply wanted to come here and say I moved from the city of Chicago to Evanston, primarily because my wife and I were retiring. We thought Evanston was a good city, especially for people who are retired and the elderly. And all of a sudden I hear this. And then is punctuated with a letter that seems to be focusing on something that seemed to be a matter of personal desires. So I'm asking you to really think about this, because you're really disadvantaging some people who have moved into downtown Evanston primarily because of the convenience that it provides for the elderly and the disadvantaged people. And for those reasons, I'm asking that you reconsider and disapprove this project.
Thank you, sir. And last, we have Robert Mark.
Good evening. I'm Robert Mark, and I live at 800 Elgin Road. I moved in a year ago. I'm totally shocked at the lack of communication, at the ignorance when it comes to planning or thinking about what we can do in order to have the city function properly. I'm shocked that some person outside of the city is influencing the city at a distance, not knowing what is currently going on. And as a 76-year-old man married to a 75-year-old woman for 51 years, we chose to move into this place because of its many ease of access issues. Not the least of which you should know, though you probably don't, that on the Elgin Road entrance there are 2 elevators. At the Clark Street side, there's 1 elevator. During moving time, which actually is probably most of the year, but most definitely significantly during the May, June, July, August, September time, there is 1 elevator on each side that will be used for moving typically. So the elevator on the south side gets busy. That means many of us are using the elevator on the north side. It would be horrible to go to the elevator on the north side, go down, and as an elderly person, then have to walk over to Benson Avenue when you could just get there with the south elevator and it would be fine. But what I'm really concerned about is a lawsuit to the city of Evanston with regard to citizens with disabilities. And you're ignoring that by blocking off Elgin Road and blocking ease of access, emergency vehicles, deliveries, and pickups for people with disabilities. We may only have 50% of our population at 800 Elgin that are elderly. I include myself in that. I'm pretty physically adept. In fact, I ride my bike on Elgin Road to Sheridan Road and then up Sheridan Road, now that you have a bike path there, and could easily put one on Elgin Road for bikers. And you could improve the pedestrian walkways with signs like you have in front of Jewel on Chicago Avenue that tell people to stop if somebody gets on the path. But I think you need to consider property values, citizens with disabilities, destroying the value of a property.
15 seconds.
And with that, I'm done, and I hope to continue to live in Evanston as a happy resident, not as a disgusted resident.
Thank you. Do I need to? Yes. Okay. Alderman Fisk? Yes, I was going to read it, but go ahead. No. It's not necessary. You can go ahead. Okay, thank you. That's what I thought. Alderman Fisk proposes a pilot to evaluate the temporary closure of Elgin Road between Emerson Street and Orrington Avenue. The purpose of this pilot is to consider the potential benefits of restoring the original street grid system at the northern edge of downtown business district. Staff seeks further direction from the Planning and Development Committee. If the committee directs staff to study this area, then a complete evaluation of vehicular turning and detourability needs further review before initiating a pilot, and this is only for discussion. Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to everybody who came and spoke tonight. I had a long conversation with Ashley. I don't know whether, Ashley, are you here? And over there somewhere? Ashley's not here tonight, okay. Had a long talk with Ashley this afternoon. This is on our agenda tonight for discussion. This is the earliest moment that we have taken to consider the some good ideas that I think were raised by former Evanston resident Rosenbaum that address some of the issues that I have been trying to work with neighborhood residents on for many years. Now, for those of you who read Mr. Rosenbaum's letter, the letter was divided into basically two parts. One, he addressed Elgin Road, and the second one, he addressed the possibility of moving the Civic Center. I'm not interested tonight in talking about the Civic Center. That's not my purpose. What interested me about the discussion on Elgin Road were many conversations that I've had with folks both at Sherman Gardens and in 800 Elgin about problems getting across Elgin Road. As you know, the median on Elgin Road is rounded at the top. There's no easy crossing over the median for pedestrians. It's actually an extremely dangerous situation. And I myself, when I was riding my bike, was hit by a car in the middle of the intersection. I mean, Elgin Road is a very busy street where people are going from point A to point B pretty much as fast as they can. And in the vicinity of Elgin Road, especially between Maple and Chicago Avenue, there have been several instances of people being hit crossing the street. So we have a problem that I see for pedestrian safety all the way from Orrington Avenue all the way up to Maple. And I think fairly within the past few years, certainly as long as I've been on the council, there was a family pushing a stroller that was hit in the intersection at Maple. So These are concerns to me as the ward alderman, and as I was reading the letter, one of the things I was struck by was is it possible for us to do a redesign of the north end of the downtown to make it safer for pedestrians and also make it easier for the new residents who are coming in on Emerson? We're going to have roughly 200 residents going into 811 Emerson, and another building planned for seniors as an addition to 1900 Sherman. So all of these are just on the other side of Sherman Gardens, and then we have, as we said, several hundred residents of Sherman Gardens as well crossing into downtown. So our pedestrian traffic in terms of coming into the downtown on the north is going to increase by many people. During my conversation with Ashley today, I said that I have always tried to be responsive to, certainly to the residents of Sherman Gardens and 800 Elgin. And I would never do or advocate for anything that would compromise your enjoyment of your building and your access in any way. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't work together to try to see if there isn't a way to make that stretch of road safer, because it's not safe. I'm absolutely convinced that it is not safe. And in returning to the original grid plan, there seems to be a way to move traffic around in a way that doesn't directly impact the safety of pedestrians. I would like our staff to look at that. And that was really the reason behind my reference to staff. How best do we do that? Now, we don't do things in a vacuum, and I'm not all powerful. So in conversation with staff, it was recommended that we bring this to the Planning and Development Committee and that we talk about whether this is even worth further discussion. That's the only reason we're here now. We're not here to advocate closing Elgin Road or any of that. We don't have enough information. So I'm sorry if that has not been communicated directly to you, but that's where we're at now. We're at the very beginning of, does this make sense? What can we do at the northern end of our downtown to make it safer? And so I'm asking my colleagues tonight, my understanding is that we don't really need to have a pilot of this length, and I hear that you have move-ins and move-outs. Maybe that doesn't make any sense at all. I'm absolutely in agreement with you on that. But I would like to get some more information. We have a big table here in Evanston. I mean, all of this, if this isn't going to be a win-win for everyone, then it's not going to work, and I'm not going to support it if it isn't a win-win for everyone. But I will tell you that planning starts early. When we were talking about Chicago Avenue and the bike lanes that we've now received so many awards for, everyone loves them, everyone uses them, everyone is safe. I don't think we've had an accident on them, and they're working really well. They came to us in the first ward. That bike lane wasn't going to exist, and it was through meetings and through conversations with residents of the ward that we really looked at that, and we advocated for a bike lane connecting to Northwestern University, and we've ended up now with a state-of-the-art bike lane that we can all be proud of. I mean, there's a lot of conversation that goes on here, and this is not unusual. Fountain Square is another example of that. When we looked at the possibility of building Fountain Square, that meant creating a public space that would hold hundreds of people. We didn't have one in Evanston. And in the center of downtown, that was our vision, to do that. That meant rerouting traffic around so you can have hundreds of people in the middle of downtown and still traffic can move around it. That was a huge discussion. And we involved not only the first ward, but the fourth ward and all the condominium owners that lived around there. And that took us, 5 years? It took us a long time to do that. So this is how planning takes place in Evanston. If somebody with a good idea comes and says, I have a good idea, we should listen to it. Absolutely listen to it. Now, this is a young man who sent us a letter out of the blue. He lives in Evanston. His parents are still here. They live in the 6th Ward. He's obviously very interested in what goes on here, and that clicked with me because of my concern about safety on Elgin Road. So I don't know what the committee wants to do. I mean, my recommendation is that we ask staff to give some thought to this. And again, the studies that would be involved would involve all of you. It's not going to happen without all of you. And at this point, I'm not sure that it would happen at all, because these traffic issues are very important issues to us. So before you shake your heads and say, this is never going to happen, we don't really have something to tell you what it would even look like. So I think it's worth at least a read on the part of our staff. And I would ask that the committee allow us to do that, but also to make sure that as we meet and talk about this, that all of you are at the table as well. So that's my 2 cents here. And I wish Ashley were here tonight so she could tell you a little bit about our conversation this afternoon, because again, I want to stress that I know a lot of people in your building. I appreciate all of them. I've worked hard for the building, and I would not do anything that would negatively affect you in any way.
Thank you.
Nothing is happening, so, yeah.
Alderman Wilson, then Alderman Nguyen, then Alderman Rainey.
Thank you. And Alderman Fisk, these are legitimate concerns. I think the one thing that probably everybody in the room could agree on is that this road could be safer. I don't think that there's anybody who could take issue with that point. And Alderman Fisk talked about this. This is a discussion item, so this is not up for a vote. It's not up for approval or not approval. Something of this nature, we wouldn't do traffic studies. We wouldn't do research. The point of this is to vet the idea. There's the expression, there are no bad ideas. We want people to bring forth ideas. There are bad plans, so you might have, you vet the ideas, you might choose to pursue a bad plan, but that's why we go through this process. So it's helpful to have people come out and share their thoughts and perspectives on it. And I do think it's extremely important to encourage ideas and to bring out this kind of conversation and dialogue. So if you see an item on any time ever, if it's up for discussion in one of our subcommittees, that's the whole point. The point is we're soliciting input from the committee members. We're going to be soliciting input from the community, but that's kind of the first step. It can't start in a vacuum. You wouldn't want to get a bunch of public notices, hey, City of Evanston is going to close your road, and official postcards and all of that stuff, because you're concerned now, but you would really panic if you got that. And there would be no reason to do that because, again, the idea hasn't been vetted. So, all of that said, I've heard what people have had to say. I've looked at the road. I'm familiar with it with my own personal use. I don't think closing it is the right way to go. And but I am interested in pursuing ways to make that general area safer. I think we can all agree that that's something that could be done. And assuming that we're not going to do this road closure, this conversation is probably the first point that leads to conversations that will create a safer environment for the 800 building, for the neighborhood. So that's what we're out to do. We're out to make sure that this is the best possible traffic flow, safety, and comfort for all of you guys. That's the point of it. So we don't want to make it worse. We want to make it better. But as far as this particular item, I don't support doing this. But, I think what Alderman Fisk is really trying to accomplish here is to initiate the conversation on what can we do to make this area safer and more comfortable for the people that are there.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. First, I want to say to everyone who came out, I agree with almost everything everyone said, and apologize. You should not have heard about this like you did. This is our fault. we really, if this was an idea that the council wanted to entertain, then having community meetings and very pointed discussions with everyone who lives on Elgin Road would have been a much better idea. So I also think that obviously thinking about things and other ways to look at our city, especially because transportation methods are changing, is really part of our job. So in that sense, we should be looking at these things, and we should be engaging the community in that every step of the way. And we try to do that at transportation and parking all the time, and to hear from people about, I mean, we all know that scooters are coming, for instance. Well, we need to be prepared for that. But we have lots of tools available to us to model traffic, to figure out, we don't need to shut this road to find out what would happen if we did. We have computer modeling that we've had at the city for years to determine, for instance, years ago, whether we should have a left turn off Ridge Avenue. And we saw exactly what would happen on that if you turned left onto Dempster coming south. We didn't need to close or start doing that and have one accident after another and backups to find out that was the case. So there are lots of other ways to study this without actually closing the road. I mean, among the other things that I see this is my route to the Civic Center. I live on Hinman Avenue south of Dempster. I drive up north on Hinman Avenue. I cross across Clark and Elgin and turn north on Foster. So this is my diagonal route along with almost everybody who lives in my area of the city. If we close it, then we have to find another route across Evanston. The other routes are Davis, filled with pedestrians, places I don't necessarily want to go. Dempster or turning north on Ridge, I do my best never to drive on Ridge because for the assorted reasons we all know. Elgin's been in place since, by my calculation, 57 years. That's 1/3 of Evanston's history. If we're going to alter something that much, we need a really significant community discussion about what's the value of doing that. I look at the truck traffic that would have to be rerouted. A lot of it would come up Chicago Avenue. Chicago Avenue is already a really crowded, busy street. What would the impact be there on Chicago Avenue? Or if it has alternative routes, what is the effects of truck traffic on Maple or Foster? And if we actually did redivert the traffic to the streets north, it would be coming directly past this new senior building on Emerson and 811 Emerson. So we're not making it particularly safer for pedestrians. I do think that I see people regularly coming across that median. We need to come up with, as Alderman Fisk said, better ways for people to cross. It's too long a length of stretch without a good crosswalk there that's well marked and well policed. But we don't need to destroy the street to make the street safe. What we need to do is look really seriously about the pedestrian safety issues and the traffic slowing issues and analyze it from a really granular level and understand who uses the street and all the different ways that it's used, because it's used lots of different ways. So I would support analyzing it from a safety standpoint, but not closing it.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I want to say to those of you who think we've had this letter and have been thinking about it, first time I ever saw this letter was today. I didn't even know it existed. So if the letter was written in April, I never saw it until today. And I don't think I'm the only one on the council who has never seen the letter before. So we're all in this together, and I was as surprised as you to read some of the details in the letter about nothing was on Elgin. I think the best people to take a look at the concerns about safety on Elgin are the people who live there. and the non-existent 800 Elgin building is probably the best group. So I think, and I was going to say many of the things that Alderman Nguyen just said, I really think that together with our traffic engineer and the people in the Elgin building, if you think Elgin is unsafe and there are issues, I really think that is a really good way to begin the survey of making Elgin safer. And also with the building on Emerson coming online, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of nuances and changes happening because there aren't just going to be 200 people in that building. There's going to be more than one person a unit there, and that's not a senior building, by the way. So there's going to be lots of changes taking place there. So I just think that the city would be wise to put together a survey group to get started if there really is a serious problem of safety there. But to close it down is just not a good idea at this point, so, or at any point maybe.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Fisk, and then Alderman Ravel. Okay.
I second a lot of what my colleagues have said. I think a lot of communities actually create sort of roads like Elgin to divert the traffic from going through the downtown. So I think there are a lot of benefits to a road like Elgin Road, but I am grateful to Alderman Fisk for bringing it to our attention, the need to make it safer. And so I think that's clearly a charge that we've heard from the residents, and as we've talked about this evening, the fact that we're going to have all those new residents on Emerson, so there's going to be even greater need to make it more pedestrian safety. So I urge us to focus on focusing on the safety issues rather than closing the road.
Can we just ask staff what next steps might be?
Good evening. We can take these comments back, and I will review with our Transportation Mobility Coordinator who drafted this memo, and we can either return to this body with compilation of those comments and a strategy for going forward, or if you would prefer to have a neighborhood meeting prior to that, we will take your direction.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, can I comment?
Yes.
Could you bring that back to P&D, and we'll keep it on as a discussion item, but also we should reach out, I think, to the community too, but just, I don't have any sense of what the transportation coordinator would
So I can
look at. Or
Jessica Heinck, our Transportation and Mobility Coordinator, has a handful of public engagement strategies and activities that could, I think, identify some of the challenges with Elgin Road, because I think what we're hearing is their pedestrian and bicycle safety issues and their interactions with vehicles, and that's where you'd like us to start. So I can have her work through some exercises that we could engage community members in identifying. I mean, I think we all have our anecdotes and our experiences. We all travel on that road.
Right.
So, and bringing forward the comments from folks that live there and work there would be helpful.
I guess what I would like to do is have a meeting in the Parasol Room and invite the community to come in, and we'll talk about what comments that we've received tonight, and maybe suggestions about how to make the area between Maple and Chicago Avenue is really the problem as it starts to shift right at Orrington. And it's not only the 800 block, but it's the 700 block as well, where we have students actually crossing the park and they see a safe zone, but they're not paying attention to the cars moving back and forth. And it's you would think that was safer, but it ends up not being safer. So I guess I would like to look at that whole stretch and hear from her at a community meeting and sort of talk this through.
Okay, so we will work to schedule something in the Parasol Room to engage, and then if you would like, we can also go out on site and perhaps do something on site, not that isn't a pilot, but that collects information, and we could invite members of the community to participate in that as well, so they can see our staff's work as they go forth and do those things.
Right, because there are lots of issues too. I mean, where are the trucks going? Are the trucks going somewhere in Evanston, or are they going to Chicago? Are they going somewhere else? Are they going to the university? Where is all the traffic coming and going in that neighborhood, and how can we possibly control it better than we are?
City Manager?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, there's a lot of potential staff work being discussed regarding this. I think that if the committee is interested in pursuing this, that the next step perhaps could be the single community meeting that we're talking about, and then maybe we come back to you before additional studies are done. I'm just concerned. I want to make sure that the committee is on the same page before we go too far into this. So, Alderman Fisk, I don't know if that's acceptable to you, that commit the committee to the one meeting as Ms. Leonard has described, and then come back with an update?
Right, and again, I mean, this is a problem that's longstanding. It's not going to solve itself unless we actually take some action. I mean, we don't want anyone else to be injured or killed, or, and what can we do to make it safer and ensure everyone's access to their property and enjoyment of their property and all those other things as well. So.
And after, I think, a meeting that Ms. Leonard has described, I think we'll have a better sense of what the scope of next steps could be, and I think then we would be able to share with the committee what we thought the resources required would be to fulfill those next steps. So we can commit to one meeting, then come back. That would be great.
So we have Alderman Rainey and Alderman Wilson. I'd just like to add that I'm just learning that, and I take that route when I'm coming home to get from work, but I'm just learning that it's an unsafe street, and I would like us to prioritize safety before development. And I'm only now hearing about the concerns, just like with the library parking lot. It was when the sale of the lot became a discussion, then I'm hearing that the alley is unsafe. So I just ask that we prioritize safety first before anything. Alderman Rainey, did you have further comment?
I just wanted to comment to see if 800 Elgin, and I'm sure they have a board, if they would like to get together and maybe give us a statement from their board regarding what they think, what they believe are the concerns. Because, I mean, they are the major players on that strip.
Yeah, and I agree. I really appreciate everyone coming out to comment. At first read of the proposal, it's, exciting. I'm all for innovation, but hearing from the residents that would be impacted and that visual of, I live on Dodge Avenue, what would it feel like to be barricaded onto Dodge Avenue? I appreciate those comments. It's helped me have a different perspective on this. We have Alderman Wilson. Do you have further comments?
So I guess the only thing I wanted to just be clear on, would it be, so people are going to leave here and they're going to wonder what's going to happen. So would it be fair to say that we're not going to pursue this pilot plan and they're going to be transitioning the conversation to a conversation about how to make the road safer? Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah.
Just so you're not leaving here thinking like, oh, we're going to talk about closing the road. That's off the table, so to speak, and it's a
Right.
different conversation now, and we appreciate that input. So that's
Right. Right.
where we're at.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make sure it was clear to everybody that that's a shift in the conversation. So.
Right, and I think after we heard from people about how they actually use it and healthcare and all of this, that's a good reason not to have the pilot. But it is really important to have the discussion, and the point I was trying to make when I first started my comments was that, yeah, Mr. Rosenbaum wrote this letter, but my connection with the letter was because it picked up on conversations that I've had over many years with folks about safety on Elgin Road. And I think this is an opportunity for us to look at that and make it better. And that's why it's important to have everybody together to do that.
Thank you. So the meeting will be scheduled. Alderman Fisk will put out a newsletter right? Inviting everyone?
It'll go out to everyone.
Everyone?
Right,
So an announcement will go out with the date and an invitation. It is going to be a public meeting, and we invite everyone to come and participate. We have any communications? I would like to ask that staff, there was a recommendation by Robert Mark for additional signage along Elgin. Is that something that we could do just by directing staff? I've done it before. Is that something that we could do, just additional safety signage?
Certainly, we can ask our traffic engineering division to look at that roadway and see what might make sense.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for being